West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
I want to talk to you about the Veep stakes. Your name is continually thrown out as being on the short list potentially, that this trip may be part of an audition. The New York Times had a lengthy piece where they talk about your transformation, they say, from somebody who was not supportive of President Trump to somebody who is full-throatedly supportive of him. They say you called him a whack job at one point, and they add this. In August 2015, she told a New York radio station that he was insulting to women and that his candidacy would hurt the party's efforts to attract female voters. According to her former friends, they continue, she thought Mr. Trump was too awful and ridiculous to be taken seriously. Her revisionism still shocks those who have known her the longest and who remember the disdain she expressed for Mr. Trump back then. So the question is when, more importantly, why did you change your mind about President Trump?
Well, Shannon, it's a disgrace that you would quote the New York Times with nameless, faceless,
but they're quoting your
sources.
Friends, so I'm giving you a chance to respond to
Shannon,
that.
Shannon, they're not quoting my friends. Those names are not included because they are false smears. I was attacked.
To be fair, there are a number of names of people. Just to be fair, there are a number of names of people who are quoted in the article.
Shannon, let me correct you.
People can read it for themselves.
This is a false smear, and let me tell you a fact, Shannon. In 2016, I was attacked as the only elected Republican from the Northeast who voted for President Trump. Democrats spent hundreds of thousands of dollars attacking me for that fact. So to say that I didn't support him is just false. I have been proud to be one of the strongest supporters, going back to when he ran for 2016, which was when it was my first re-election to the House. I have strongly supported him. He is going to be the next president of the United States. The American people know that. My constituents know that. And I'm proud to be one of his strongest allies in Congress. I have always put my district first, New York 21 first, and America first. And this is an opportunity for us to stop the failures of Joe Biden and elect a president who led to a booming economy, a strong national security. But my record speaks for itself, Shannon.
But let me ask you.
My record stands for itself.
Let me ask you, though, because they quote you on a radio station calling him insulting to women. Is that a misquote? Did you not say that?
I said the statement that the Democrats leaked out in 2016, that was insulting. However, Shannon, I stood by and supported him, and I strongly support him. And he has done so much to promote women in senior positions, as well as promote women's economic opportunity that we experienced under the 4 years of his administration. So I've been proud to support him. It's a disgrace that you would take a New York Times article and just read negative quotes when the reality was I was the only Republican elected woman from the Northeast who voted for him in 2016, who has strongly supported him, and I'm proud to be one of his strongest allies today.
Okay, we know where you are today. Folks can go read that article for themselves. There are plenty of names, people who went on the record, and we'll leave it there. Clearly, you are supportive of him now, and we will track and follow where you are on the campaign trail.
I was supportive of him then, Shannon, in 2016, as you know, so I hope you will tell the viewers that as well, which I voted for him in 2016 and was attacked for doing so.
As I was supportive of him then, Shannon, as I was supportive of him then, please make sure, Shannon, that you don't forget that I was always supportive of Donald Trump. I need everybody watching right now to know that never a day went by when I, Elise Stefanik's entire identity wasn't wrapped up in my slavish devotion to him. Please make sure the record reflects that I've always thought about him when I laid my head down on the pillow at night, and that he was the first thing I thought of when I woke up in the morning, and that when I make breakfast, I think to myself, what would Donald Trump be eating right now? So please, Shannon, make sure that you understand that I support him and that I will support him every day until my dying breath, Shannon. To reiterate, the question here was, why did you change your mind about President Trump? And despite the 2-minute-long filibuster, the answer is actually quite simple. It's because Elise Stefanik is a shameless, power-hungry, craven, lying, run-of-the-mill politician. She saw power in Donald Trump and decided to do whatever she could to align herself with it. She has no long-held principles, she has no values, she has no positions, she merely wants power. She is a leech who has attached itself to a host, which would be bad enough unto itself, but somehow worse is the fact that she denies the reality of what she is. I don't know what century Elise Stefanik thinks she's living in, but it's actually quite easy to find what she said on what's called the internet, which is a handy little tool that stores all of our past comments and answers and statements, which for Elise includes saying in 2016 that Trump would not become the Republican nominee for president. In Congress, she said that Trump should release his tax returns, which he never did. In 2015, she blasted candidates who she said disqualified themselves by making untruthful statements. Quote, I think that the presidential field, there are some candidates who over the long run, and they've already started this process, are somewhat disqualifying themselves with untruthful statements, not being willing to really talk about the substance of issues and just firing away rhetorical devices that don't necessarily have a basis in fact. Wonder who she could have been referencing there. In 2016, she criticized Trump's fear-mongering, saying, unfortunately, it's tapping into the fear today of our security situation. I think we should expect more substance out of our candidates. In August of 2015, she said of Trump's attacks against then Fox host Megyn Kelly, I think he has been insulting to women. I think this may be Mr. Trump's peak moment, and I think we're going to see his numbers change and decline over the coming weeks and months as the other candidates have an opportunity to share their vision for the future of this country. We need to ensure that we're increasing our party's ability to reach out to women, and I can work on that in Congress. I care passionately about that, and Donald Trump's comments have not helped that effort. They have hurt that effort. In October 2016, after Trump's Access Hollywood tape emerged, Stefanik said, Donald Trump's inappropriate, offensive comments are just wrong, no matter when he said them or whatever the context. I hope his apology is sincere. When Trump proposed a Muslim ban, Stefanik said, this is not who we are as a country, this is not according to our constitutional principle, and I associate myself with Speaker Ryan's comments, just saying that there's no place for what Trump said about Muslims in the country. She later added, I don't think that's who we are, that's not according to our constitutional principles. When he attacked Gold Star families, she said, I think there is no excuse to be attacking Gold Star families. Military families deserve our utmost respect. She added that she would always support the Republican nominee, but, quote, I'm an independent voice and that has not changed. Well, I think we can safely say that it's changed now, with Elise Stefanik firmly and permanently planted in the protective warmth of Donald Trump's colon. I have seen caterpillar cocoons that were less restrictive than the degree to which Elise Stefanik has wedged herself up Donald Trump's ass. And by the way, it's clear to everyone. Here's an interview I had with Dan Goldman just a few days ago, before this clip even aired, and when we discussed Donald Trump's supplicants, just listen to the name that he brings up first. Do any of your Republican colleagues disagree with this? Do you hear, as far as these people going to the courthouse and just making themselves supplicants for Donald Trump, do they disagree with it? Do you hear from any of these people behind the scenes that this is a circus and that they all look like clowns?
There are some who I definitely hear from who are frustrated by it, who question it, who do not like it. Most of them are pretty quiet and not coming out against Donald Trump, but they're not coming out strongly in favor of him. The ones who are coming out so strongly in favor of him are doing it out of pure personal and political ambition. I mean, when you look at someone like Elise Stefanik, who came into Congress as a moderate, thoughtful, reasonable Republican and did a 180 when she saw an opportunity to kiss Donald Trump's ass and try to emerge as a leader under the MAGA hat within the Republican Party. And what she says now is so consistently contrary to what she has said before. And it's so pathetic that she has sacrificed all of her morals and integrity just to placate Donald Trump for her own political ambition. And there are others like that as well. So it's a mixed bag.
Well, the worst part about that is that she knows exactly who she's fooling by virtue of doing this. She's just, I mean, it's not the Democrats who can't see what she's become. It's her own audience that she's perfectly content to pull the wool over their eyes because she's just operating in blind deference to Donald Trump. So yeah, when Shannon Bream poses these questions to Elise Stefanik, she may clutch her pearls, she may start to feel woozy, she might even need someone to pull the fainting couch over, but the only person who apparently can't see what Elise Stefanik has become is Elise Stefanik. In the meantime, this should serve as a warning to all Americans that this is what the Republican Party has devolved into. When you could even have one of the self-proclaimed most independent voices in Congress turn into a groveling, frothing, rabid Trump sycophant, then there really is no hope for the rest of this party. They exist not to serve you, but to serve Trump. That's not a government, it is a cult of personality, and it doesn't belong anywhere near the levers of power.
It is Monday, the 20th of May of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, River City Hash Mondays. It's the day after a weekend. And sometimes it's a holiday, but today it's just the day after the weekend. And you know what we do with what's left over from the weekend? Oh yes, we repurpose it into a gourmet delight for your gourmet pleasure. Actually, the pleasure part is when you're a gourmand. Gourmets are just, they judge. But gourmands, they enjoy. And that's what we are here, really. Anyway, hopefully I'm on the mend from that chest cold laryngitis crud that I've had for a little bit. I've been trying not to think that I might have caught my brother-in-law's touch of his pneumonia. I'm like, keep my fingers crossed. But, because, yeah, he had pneumonia. And can you catch it? Probably. So I'm hoping that's not the case, but if it is, I seem to be on the mend, and that's good. I don't have the terrible scratchiness. I can still tell in certain registers of my vocal range there is a little bit of scratchiness left, but not so much that it causes me to go into coughing spasms. Oh, once again, I apologize. Didn't get to the mute button. So if you heard me how you've never heard me before, it's because I didn't get to the mute button after all these years, or I couldn't wait until the break and then clear my airways. Okay, I apologize for that. Don't want to gross anybody out, but had a lot on my mind the better part of this last month. Yeah. On that front, I'll just say I'm continue to be terribly sad. Had a few breakdowns over the weekend where I was reduced to, crying spasms. Because I still feel really bad. And who wouldn't? You lose your mom at any age. It's, that's your mom, It's hard not to think about, all the good things juxtaposed against the last time you get to see her. So I like to think that the last time I got to see her wasn't when we watched her heart stop in the hospital. But when I was still caring for her when she was on the floor, while we were waiting for the EMTs to arrive. And a little conversation then when she was still lucid. So, is that a good time or a bad time? I don't know. It just makes me terribly, terribly sad. we had a nice little talk. She was still joking around some. But once the EMTs got there, that deterioration happened pretty darn quick. I think she was holding out. Held out for as long as she could. Oh, yeah, so that makes me sad, because it's your mom. Who wouldn't be sad? And I appreciate folks out there for extending well wishes and offers for help, because that does help. It's nice knowing that, I guess people don't consider you to be a burden. I consider myself to be a burden, and I appreciate those who, might lend me the shoulder and have. So thank you very much for all of that. Gone through a lot over these so many years, haven't we? Boy, surgeries, deaths, illnesses, recoveries, a Nazi takeover of the world. All we wanted was an edit button. That's all we wanted, an edit button. And now we got a Nazi takeover of the world. Okay. Well, So, yeah, we've gone through a lot, and I would venture to say we have a lot to go through still, especially since we have this Nazi takeover of the world. How dare they? They're always going to be on the bad side of history. The problem is that a lot of people die in the process. Good people. Yeah, well, at least we were on the right side of history. Yeah, but we're dead. Yeah, well, legacy. Yeah, legacy means you're dead. I like to live. And I don't want to have to put up with these damn Nazis telling us how to goose step and where. No goose stepping allowed. This, democracy, Nazism is not allowed. Okay? There's no room for it. You cannot have a representative democracy when you have a group of people who will stab you in the back, destroy your institutions, and pretty much be a Nazi. We don't want that. Not allowed. If they could do that to commies, why can't we do it to Nazis? I know it's because there were a lot of Nazis going after the commies, and that gave them an excuse to be Nazis. They didn't tell us. They called it by other names, like the White Citizens Council, the Birchers. Yeah, they were all Nazis. Those are your neighbors. Yeah, my neighbors are Nazis. Jeez. And the biggest mistake they make is thinking that the Second Amendment only applies to them. Oh, we have all the guns. No, you don't. You don't have all the guns. Trust me. It's just that some of us don't need an arsenal. And can you really get to that big arsenal of all those guns that you have? You're going to be able to grab maybe a handful. Well, an armful. Okay? And while you're whacking around with an armful of guns, those of us who don't need a big arsenal, because I got to tell you, our endowment down there is good enough. We don't need more. We're more efficient at it, too. Let's just say. So is that a threat? No. No, it's reality. It's what the other side purports to be doing. We have to arm ourselves because there's going to be a takeover from the multicultural hordes descending upon us. Yeah, tell me that's not racist. We're not racist. We just don't want multicultural people telling us how to live our lives. What, get along and stop being a bully? That's so hard. You have to have a constitutional amendment to be a bully? I guess they do. Oh, yeah. Speaking of bullies, and I saw reports that deaths in 2023 went up in rural areas to levels never seen before. And the reason being is that you got a bunch of constitutional sheriffs out there who think they are a law unto themselves, and they've been taking it upon themselves. I don't know. Are they the enforcers of a star chamber? Are they the part now of the killer elite? Go out and decide who is a bad guy and who's not and get rid of them? Yeah, okay. Or is it just themselves deciding with their little Reader's Digest pocket constitutions that have certain amendments that don't exist in there, like in Trump's Bible? He put the U.S. Constitution in the Bible, but he conveniently left out the 14th and 19th Amendments. The amendment that allowed slaves to vote and not be slaves anymore, and women to vote and be full people. Just conveniently left that out of his Bible. And people will read it and say, it's in the Bible. There's nothing that says that women are equal. It's in the Bible. That's how this brainwashing works. And you got a bunch of dimwits who would think that and do. Hell, they think the prosperity gospel has validity. How many times have I heard whiners whine who live off this prosperity gospel bullshit and justify every bad purchase they can make at the expense of others, and they do. They are the biggest whiners. I have it so bad. Really? I think I mentioned last week that one of my MAGA neighbors has been whining about how bad the economy is, but didn't stop him from buying like $140,000, $160,000 Mercedes. Jeez. Not even buying American. My God. Okay. Well, just because you got money doesn't mean that you become suddenly intelligent, though everybody who has money thinks they are. I'm the most intelligent person in the world. I have the answers to the biggest questions in the universe because I have a lot of money. Who thinks like that? People with a bunch of money. And people who think that if they get a bunch of money, they'll suddenly be endowed with all the intelligence and knowledge the universe has to offer, and more. Because it's the more part that really exists in their continents. All right. Well, we want more. Yeah, well, at some point, isn't what you have good enough? Can you be comfortable on what you have? Can you make do? Oh no, I have to acquire more. All right. In the meantime, while people are scrambling to collect more, the beauty of light collapsing down through the atmosphere so it touches upon our warm faces, I think that has quite a bit of value. It's, in fact, priceless. You cannot even put a value to it. It is so valuable. And maybe, if we're lucky, some of us, in our last moments before, well, let's be clear, when the blood starts draining from you, you get really cold. But before that happens, maybe we might appreciate the warmth of the light collapsing down through the atmosphere and touching our warm faces. If we're lucky. All right, enough of those metaphysical considerations. What do we have in store for you here in the Bistro Cafe as we begin this fabulous River City Hash Mondays? Well, it is fabulous since just as an aside, I'm sorry, Raisi is not, look, I'm glad something untoward happened to him because that guy was a murderous mofo. They just killed 4 women here just this last week. Hung them. Why? For being women. Jesus. All right. Is there going to be some big changes there? I doubt it. But I know there's no such thing as karma. Karma is just karma. But hey, you might just say, Raisi is the victim of karma. Whatever that is, good or bad. All right, well, I just had to mention that. Down goes Raisi. At the top, yes, Elise Stefanik is, she's pretty hypocritical, isn't she? Yeah, power mad lady. I think so. On the rest of the menu, this burns me up. The family of an indigenous Arizona man who was killed by Border Patrol agents after he called them for help. Well, his family has filed a wrongful death suit, and well, they should. Actually, they filed it a day to the year, on the year anniversary of his unfortunate demise. I would say murder. Inmates at a Virginia prison for the mentally ill were hospitalized at least 13 times in 3 years. The last 3 years, 13 times. No one should get hypothermia in prison. What the hell is going on? I'll tell you. Retribution, not rehabilitation. And U.S. regulators are reconsidering the mandated 20% capital hike for big banks because big banks got to get their way. They always do. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Europe's far-right groups launched their unofficial campaign for the European Union elections. I told you there's a Nazi takeover and we cannot let it happen. And the State Department issued an unusual warning to Americans traveling abroad of the, quote, potential for terrorist attacks, demonstrations, or violent actions against U.S. citizens and interests, and they specifically cited anti-LGBTQ plus murders, terrorism, and violent actions against. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and that chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. Across the page to the left from the chat room link that is monitored by Kelly Lincoln is the link to our Patreon page, and if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really does help us pay our bills and all the other costs associated with running this powerhouse of resistance. In fact, we have an upcoming domain registration fee, once again, yearly, you know. So thank you for your help in allowing us to be that powerhouse of resistance all these many years. And, it's as the founders originally intended. So there you go. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on the social medias, it is very easy to do so. Just go to @NetrootsRadio, and Tom takes care of those. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on the social medias @JusticePutnam. I post the show notes and links diaries on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime, and that way you have quick and easy access to the show notes and links. If you follow me on social media, then that takes you to Daily Co's, and, I guess from there, then you can actually read the reports from the actual reporters. So, as easy as I can make it. Indeed. You can follow the show on Twitter. I know he just turned it over to X.com. F him. It's Twitter. Anyway, you can follow the show on Twitter @CookbookWest and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, iTunes, YouTube, Audible, everywhere. You can pick up those podcasts everywhere. And please do. wherever podcasts can be found. They're everywhere. Okay, still have a little bit of the huskiness of my whatever that chest cold viral thing was. It gave me a touch of laryngitis. I still may have a touch of a touch. Alrighty, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is Out of the Daily Beast by Brooke Lee Howard. Nearly a year to the day after an indigenous Arizona man called police for help about undocumented migrants trespassing on his property, well, alleged. And that was within tribal land and was killed by U.S. Border Patrol agents. Well, the family has filed a lawsuit demanding action in their loved one's untimely death. On Friday, Raymond Mattia's family insisted that Customs and Border Patrol take responsibility for the death they considered was unjustified. In the lawsuit that was filed just last Thursday against U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the Mattia family demanded justice for each member who was affected by their loved one's death. The suit demanded monetary damages, relief in general, and compensatory damages, as well as punitive damages, against each of the 7 family members listed as individuals in Mattia's estate, and a trial by jury. The Mattia family suggested in November that they plan to file a lawsuit for $15 million. On the night of May 18th, 2023, the Tohono O'odham Nation Police Department, roughly 2 hours outside of Tucson, requested help from Border Patrol after receiving a call about gunshots. Mattia, who lived on the reservation, had previously complained about migrants crossing through his property. During a previous interview with the Daily Beast, Mattia's niece, Lisa Mattia, said the family thought the migrants were not seeking asylum, but were instead trying to peddle drugs into the U.S. Other members of the Mattia family also had property on the reservation and said they would find discarded clothes from the migrants, who the Mattia family said wore special shoes to keep their footsteps from being tracked in the desert. However, instead of finding migrants, body cam footage of the incident shows Border Patrol agents and a police officer searching the property until they find Mattia outside his house with a machete. Officers tell Mattia to put down the weapon. He tosses it towards them, and dozens of shots instantly fire. Officers continue shouting directions at Mattia not to move after he's already been shot several dozen times, and his body's bouncing from the bullet. Stop moving! I guess he didn't comply. According to Border Patrol, agents were called due to reports of gunshots and were looking for a possible suspect, so they killed the guy with a machete. The Mattia family believed nearly 40 shots were fired, and 9 of them hit their loved one that night. Mattia, age 58, was pronounced dead at a local hospital, and officers involved were placed on administrative leave, meaning they got pay for killing a guy. The Mattia's family consistently tried to get answers, but they claimed the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Arizona kept giving them the runaround. Is it because we're Native Americans we don't deserve answers? Lisa Mattia asked at the time. We want justice for Ray. We still want questions answered. We want to know why they approached him with the vulgarity they did. It looks like they were in a war zone, and it looks like they were not going there to be tactical. They weren't going in there with any kind of organization. It was messy, it was chaotic, and we want to know why. Rankin of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. The Virginia State Police investigator seemed puzzled about what the inmate was describing. Unbearable conditions at a prison so cold that toilet water would freeze over, and inmates were repeatedly treated for hypothermia. How do you get hypothermia in a prison, the investigator asked. You shouldn't, they answered. The exchange, captured on video obtained by the Associated Press, took place during an investigation into the death of Charles Givens, a developmentally disabled inmate at the Marion Correctional Treatment Center, who records show was among those repeatedly hospitalized for hypothermia. After a special grand jury considered the case but opted not to bring criminal charges, Givens' sister sued in federal court, alleging her brother was subjected to routine mistreatment, including cold water torture, before he was fatally beaten in 2022. The lawsuit has raised broader questions about conditions at the Southwest Virginia prison, which the grand jury described as inhumane and deplorable. The AP obtained records showing inmates at Marion, which houses predominantly mentally ill offenders, were hospitalized for hypothermia at least, I'll repeat that, at least 13 times in 3 years during cold weather months, while medical providers expressed concern about temperatures at the prison. Medical providers at the prison raised the prospect that the antipsychotic medicine some inmates were taking could have played a role in their hypothermia hospitalizations, according to the records. But medical experts not connected to the prison said that type of side effect is rare, and the number of hospitalizations should have been a cause for concern. There's something unusual about the circumstances that would be leading to this high number of hospitalizations for this condition that otherwise is really, really unusual and really rare, said Dr. Fred Yarkskog, a professor of psychiatry at UNC Chapel Hill and research director of the North Carolina Psychiatric Research Center. I can say that with a lot of confidence. He said he has spent 30 years treating patients with antipsychotics and encountered maybe one episode of hypothermia. Even a single case of hypothermia in a patient at the hospital where he works would prompt discussion. Figures like what the DOC had seen would prompt a massive investigation, he said. Kyle Gibson, a spokesman for the Virginia Department of Corrections, repeatedly declined to answer questions about the records showed or to address prison conditions, citing the pending litigation. He did not acknowledge an AP request to interview the facility's warden or another official with oversight of Marion. The Department of Corrections and the Attorney General's office previously withheld documents the AP sought under the open records laws for the state related to Givens' death and inmate complaints about cold temperatures. In addition to mentally ill patients, the Marion prison houses general population offenders, such as the person seen speaking with the investigator in the video, who provide support services including maintenance and cleaning. A state procurement document from 2018 for renovations that would include an HVAC system replacement said no major improvements had been made to the building since its core structures were built in 1955. Mishra and Disha Mishra of Reuters brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Federal Reserve and two other U.S. regulators are moving toward a new plan that will significantly reduce a nearly 20% mandated increase in capital for the country's biggest banks following lobbying efforts by industry CEOs like J.P. Morgan Chase's Jamie Dimon, the Wall Street Journal reported yesterday, Sunday. Required increases in capital for banks like J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs, meant to ensure they have sufficient buffers to absorb potential losses, would on average be about half as much as originally floated. Top officials from all three agencies involved in the pending capital rules, the Federal Reserve, the FDIC Corporation, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corp, and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, are still discussing substantive and technical revisions, and there is no guarantee that an agreement will be reached. The Fed, the FDIC, and the OCC declined to comment on the report because why would they? The three bank regulators, led by the Fed in July last year, unveiled a proposal to overhaul how banks with more than $100 billion in assets calculate the cash they set aside to absorb potential losses. The Basel proposal aims to make banks more resilient to potential losses, lowering the risk of failures or bailouts. Banks say they are already highly capitalized and the changes are unnecessary because history has shown we'll go and bail them out anytime, anywhere, anyhow, so they don't need to do anything. Well, that brings us to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, The Setup. With a studio change, Fox to Disney, a new director, Wes Ball from Maze Runner, and no more Andy Serkis in the lead, there were questions as to how Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes would stand up, especially given just how good the previous trilogy was. The short answer is pretty well. The action here picks up 300 years after the death of the revered Caesar, with clans of primates eking out somewhat satisfying lives amidst the ruins of the former human civilization. A young ape, Noah, lives with a clan that raises eagles for hunting and defensive purposes, but when returning home from an egg hunt, finds his village being destroyed, his father dead, and its inhabitants being kidnapped by the evil Proximus Caesar, a leader who it turns out has perverted the name and legend of Caesar for his own purposes. How unheard of. Most of the movie is a coming-of-age road trip where the young Noah encounters the wise orangutan Raka, who imparts the real teachings of Caesar, May, and Echo, a term here for humans who's retained the power of speech, and has a mission at the facility where Proximus has set up shop, as well as Trevathan, a wonderful William H. Macy, a prisoner and human advisor to Proximus. The set design is evocative of the History Channel's Life After Humans, and AI's impact on motion capture can already be seen. Owen Teague, Noah's character, carries this one, but in a far different way than Serkis's Caesar. Noah is growing and incorporating spirituality and proto-political ideas into a character to come. In Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, we find apes repeating human mistakes, and humans, without spoilers, still human and not as done as we might have thought they were. Thus, the setup for next time. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work.
Sorry, I'm late.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
If you love them enough to turn off your music and pretend like their music is your music,
this is Mommy's jam.
then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. This week, we're looking at the reasons why people don't vote. A 2020 survey by political research site 538.com found that many just don't like the candidate. Some have to wait in line for hours, and some, well, they just don't think their vote makes a difference. In fact, a perception that voting wouldn't make a difference is one of the biggest reasons that people don't bother to vote. Another survey by NPR, also done in 2020, looked at that in detail. It found that 80% of non-voters thought that traditional parties and politicians didn't care about them, and 66% thought that voting in elections didn't really affect how decisions were made in the country. And 53% of non-voters said it didn't matter who was elected president because nothing would really change for people like them. Both surveys found that the number of non-voters increased as income decreased. NPR found that in household incomes of $50,000 or less, 43% of citizens surveyed were non-voters. 52% of non-voters don't have a high school education. Non-voters are likely to be young and more likely not to be married. Non-voters in both surveys said that they were more likely to vote if Election Day were a national holiday, as proposed in the Freedom to Vote Act and John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. Both bills were blocked by conservatives in the U.S. Senate. Links to articles and the surveys can be found at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. For the American Democracy Minute, I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1938. That was the day unemployed workers began a sit-down strike at the post office in Vancouver, British Columbia. They had been organized by the communist-led Relief Project Workers Union during the Great Depression. In Canada, federally funded works projects had been administered at the provincial level. By late 1937, the Prime Minister began to cut funding. Unable to financially sustain the projects alone, Provincial Premier Thomas Patillo ended the works project for British Columbia. Masses of unemployed men thrown off their jobs, some driven to homelessness, organized occupations of the Hotel Georgia, the Vancouver Art Gallery, and the Maine Post Office to protest the cuts. While hotel owners paid protesters to leave, the occupation at the gallery and the post office lasted for weeks. Finally, on Father's Day, June 18th, gallery occupiers were driven out with tear gas. The post office strikers were met with much more violence. Royal Canadian Mounted Police led the assault with tear gas and forcibly dragging of sit-downers out of the building. Once evicted, they were met with the batons of local police. Organizers were singled out for especially severe beatings, and scores were hospitalized for their injuries. One striker, Arthur Redseth, had an eye knocked out, while his fellow sit-downer had his jaw broken for asking authorities to call an ambulance for his friend. Strike leader Steve Brody suffered permanent eye damage as well. News of the terror spread throughout the city, and by mid-afternoon, 10 to 15,000 protesters gathered to express outrage at what became known as Bloody Sunday in Vancouver. Premier Patello denounced the strikers as having received too much sympathy. He nonetheless used the debacle as an opportunity to get federal funds reinstated. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin, whether from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 48 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs in the low to mid-70s, so a little bit warmer than yesterday. We'll see. We'll have plentiful sunshine throughout the day, and winds will be out of the north-northwest at a brisk 10 to 15 miles per hour. Clear skies overnight with lows in the low 40s. Winds out of the west-northwest at a continuing brisk 10 to 15 miles per hour. And then generally sunny tomorrow, despite a few afternoon clouds. Highs in the mid to upper 70s. Winds out of the northwest at a not-so-brisk 5 to 10 miles per hour. Looks like grass pollen is rated very high in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 22 parts per million. And that daytime UV index remains very high at level 8, so you know to take care. Barometric pressure is rising for a little bit longer at 30.24 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 81%. Yeah, come on, scroll for me. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 70 degrees and fair. Paris is 68 and mostly cloudy with a thunderstorm watching. You know, I've mentioned how raucous thunderstorms in Paris can be. Rome is 76 degrees and partly cloudy with a thunderstorm watch as well. And it can be pretty raucous in Rome, too, when the thunderstorms roll through. Kabul is 62 degrees and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 72 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 66 and partly cloudy. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 52 and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 58 and fair. Chicago, Illinois is 76 degrees and fair. And New York, New York is 68 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Teresa Madrano of the Associated Press World Desk brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. Europe's far-right political parties unofficially launched their campaigns on Sunday yesterday for European Union elections in Spain with strong messages against illegal migration and the bloc's climate policy, while declaring their support for Israel and its war against Hamas. French National Party leader Marine Le Pen and Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni tried to rally voters at an event organized by Spain's far-right Vox party in Madrid ahead of the EU's parliamentary elections on June 6th through 9th. Analysts say the vote across the bloc's 27 nations could see a strong rise of the far right. Meloni, whose Brothers of Italy party has foundations in Mussolini's fascism, spoke in Spanish via video conference and called for young people to vote. "You are the only possible future for Europe," Meloni told them in a perfect Jud style that's really loved by those kinds of fascists. The defense of the EU's borders was another main theme of the last 2 days of a meeting organized by Vox in an arena on the outskirts of the Spanish capital. Meloni defended her country's policy of reaching agreements with third countries to try to curb illegal immigration, while Le Pen advocated for reform of the Schengen area, which allows free movement of people within most of the bloc's borders, so that Europe allows each country to choose who enters and who leaves its territory. Vox's president Santiago Abascal called for unity of the far right ahead of the European election in the face of globalism. Oh, isn't that a nice word for Jewish cabal? Yes, it is. "We must respond with a global alliance of patriots in defense of common sense, economic prosperity, security, and freedom, because we share the threat, and that leads us to solidarity. Sieg Heil!" The vote will indicate whether the continental political drift will match the rightward swing seen across much of the globe, from the Netherlands to Slovakia to Argentina. Simon Drucker of United Press International brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The State Department is warning Americans traveling abroad of the potential for terrorist attacks, demonstrations, or violent actions against U.S. citizens and interests. The worldwide alert warned of the potential for violence against LGBTQ plus people. Due to the potential for terrorist attacks, demonstrations, or violent actions against U.S. citizens and interests, the Department of State advises U.S. citizens overseas to exercise increased caution. The Department of State is aware of increased potential for foreign terrorist organization-inspired violence against LGBTQ plus people, persons, and events, and advises U.S. citizens overseas to exercise increased caution. It cautions Americans abroad to remain alert in locations frequented by tourists, including pride celebrations and venues frequented by LGBTQ plus people. The alert is reportedly in response to threats made by ISIS militants against pride events set to take place in parts of Europe. Pride Month takes place in June. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.